Many people avoid cholesterol-rich foods because they immediately think it's unhealthy. But actually, not all cholesterol is created equal. Knowing the difference can lead to a healthier and happier life. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez. We'll differentiate the good and the bad cholesterol. This is Med Talk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. We need cholesterol in our bodies, that's a fact. And it's found in our cells and helps form the cell membranes and cell structures, among other things. It also produces hormones, vitamin D, and other substances. And 75% of cholesterol is made by our livers. This is why some people who do eat right still have high cholesterol levels. The other 25% comes from the food we eat. When there is excessive cholesterol in our blood, it can be a real problem. As a common Filipino expression goes, nasa dugo yan. With us today is Dr. Lourdes Ella Santos. She's a preventive cardiologist, lipid and hypertension specialist from the Cardinal Santos Medical Center. We also have Dr. Katrina Flor Carigma. She practices occupational and family medicine at the Asian Hospital and Medical Center. Thank you both for joining us. Now, my first question is for Dr. Luella. Can you explain why is there bad cholesterol? Why is there good cholesterol?
Great question. So when we take a lipid profile, a fasting lipid profile, understand that the total cholesterol that we get from that fasting lipid profile is usually made up of three components. The first one is good cholesterol, or HDL. The second is LDL, or bad cholesterol. And the third is triglycerides. And these are actually the fats that you get from carbohydrates. When we talk about breakdown of these components, it is the LDL that we fear. Now, these LDL cholesterols, when they continue to accumulate in the lining of the arteries, that is what can eventually cause a blockage, and that can lead to heart attack as well as stroke in the brain. So good cholesterol has the ability to absorb the bad cholesterol in the body through what we call the reverse cholesterol transport. So what we want is an increase in good cholesterol so that we can be prevented from getting strokes or heart attacks.
Okay, and ultimately what you want is your low-density lipoproteins, or your LDL, to be low, as was mentioned. So L is for low, and you want your high-density lipoproteins, or HDL, to be high. So H is for high. Not so difficult to understand right there. Now, Dr. Katz, how do you distinguish good and bad cholesterol pagdating sa pagkain? How can you distinguish it in your food?
Usually, the saturated fats, it causes the bad cholesterol to increase. So usually found in animal proteins and usually some commercially baked goods. But the good cholesterol, we also have that with polyunsaturated foods that we can get the good cholesterol, like the sunflower oil or vegetable proteins. So what we do is, if we know how to choose our food well, and we know how to lower our LDL cholesterol and increase our HDL cholesterol, the good choice of food would mean a lot to our patients.
Sabi nga nila, avoid high cholesterol food to reduce the risk of heart attack. Now, Dr. Luella, what is the effect of too much bad cholesterol in our bodies and our hearts? Now, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but could you remind our viewers again?
When we talk about the buildup of LDL cholesterol, understand that throughout the body's circulation, this bad cholesterol can accumulate. So several places that we are familiar with include the heart. So these are patients who develop coronary artery disease, and that can eventually lead to heart attacks. We know about the brain. Accumulation of LDL in the brain can lead to blockages, and that can produce strokes. But other places where these bad cholesterol can actually accumulate include the legs. And these are patients who just on slight walking, develop some leg pain that get better when they rest because the blockages in the legs are not allowing them to be able to walk without any pain. Other areas where cholesterol can deposit, bad cholesterol, include the carotid arteries, which now become one of the diagnostic tools for us to be able to look to see if you have an elevation or an accumulation of bad cholesterol.
That's right. And now I'd like to talk a little bit about hypertension because, reminder to our viewers, hypertension is also known as the silent killer. It affects around 3 in 5 Filipinos. Now, still with Dr. Luella, what does this say about the Filipino diet, knowing that 3 out of 5 Filipinos are affected with hypertension?
We've found that one of the challenges really with Filipinos is the fact that salt is so much a part of our diet. So pagka po kumakain tayo, may toyo, patis, bagoong, that's extra flavor on top of already partially salted food that come from the kitchen. So it's very difficult because inherently in Filipinos, we really do have a higher salt intake. And we want you to understand that this salt intake is what can contribute to development of hypertension. In that, usually the recommendation is about 2.5 grams of salt in the diet, or 2 to 2.5. I want you to understand that practicality, this just means a teaspoon of salt per day. So dapat po yung isang teaspoon of salt divided into 3 for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner. Ganyan lang po kakonti dapat ang kinakain nating asin sa ating diet.
Now, Dr. Katz, what is the test in order to measure the cholesterol levels of your patients? And what cholesterol levels are considered healthy and what's not?
Usually, we ask the lipid profile of the patient. So, if it includes the total cholesterol, the LDL, and the HDL. So the total cholesterol is usually 200 milligrams per DL. LDL is less than 100 milligrams per DL, and HDL is less 50 milligrams per DL or higher. We also measure triglycerides, which is also a form of lipids that is included in the lipid profile of the patient.
Now, there are many things that can affect our cholesterol levels, and we'll discuss these factors when we return. This is Med Talk Health Talk. Keep it right here on CNN Philippines. Many Filipinos suffer from high cholesterol. We're back to determine the factors that can contribute to this. You're watching Med Talk Health Talk, where your health comes first. Now, I'll go to Dr. Katz. Dr. Katz, maraming mga factors talaga na nakakapekto ng cholesterol, but could you share with our viewers kung ano yung mga factors na pwedeng baguhin ng isang tao when it comes to cholesterol levels?
Yes, we understand that we have modifiable and non-modifiable risk factors for cholesterol. For the modifiable risk factors, in short, we have control over it. So our diet is contributory to increasing in bad cholesterol levels. So obesity could also contribute to it. Lack of exercise or physical activity.
Okay, now let's talk about the typical Filipino diet because as I mentioned earlier, 3 out of 5 Filipinos are hypertensive. And to put that into perspective, for a normal Filipino family, there's a good chance that one family member is hypertensive. Now, I'll go to Dr. Luella. Are there any other alternatives in order for that Filipino to still have that normal diet?
Great question. So mostly what we lose when we remove salt is taste. So I always tell my patients to make up for the lack of salt, try to do alternative tastes. So for example, seasoning, put a little more herbs, lagyan ng mas maraming kalamansi, sile, para malasa pa rin yung pagkain. So kahit na wala yung asin, hindi dapat kinukuha ang lasa sa asin, sa patis, sa bagoong. Pero marami naman tayong ibang pwedeng idagdag para malasa pa rin yung pagkain at para yung mga tao sa bahay mas masanay na hindi sa asin nakukuha yung taste.
Good examples right there. Now, obesity not only increases your risk for heart disease, but can also increase your triglycerides. Now, Dr. Katz, what is a good body mass index to maintain? And is the body mass index still a good factor for our viewers to rely on?
Yes, the body mass index is a ratio of our weight and height. The BMI, usually we still base it on the BMI, but
Okay.
the waist circumference is also affecting the risk for cardiovascular disease. So the BMI should also be a guide to our patient that there's an attainable weight and for their height, and the abdominal circumference also contributes to the risk of cardiovascular diseases. Hypertension, diabetes, and other cancer also could have a predictor with BMI or the abdominal circumference.
Regular exercise is a good way to keep healthy, we all know that, and it actually has the most effect on lowering your triglycerides and increasing your HDL. Dr. Luella, how often should one exercise and for how long should each duration be on average?
So this past year, 2020, has been challenging in the fact that we've had sedentary lifestyles because of lockdown. So the recommendation really is that we exercise most days of the week. That's 5 out of the 7 days. And the duration that's recommended is anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. And this is moderate to vigorous intensity exercise, understanding that this exercise is based on baseline. So when you start exercising, don't push yourself into very vigorous exercise, but work your way to that 30 to 45 minutes moderate to vigorous intensity so that you can keep it daily or 5 to 7 days out of the week so that it can impact cardiovascular health in, as you mentioned, weight reduction to lower your triglycerides and HDL cholesterol.
That's right. And I advise my viewers, in order for you to know if you're working out too much, if you can still carry on a conversation while working out, you're doing good. But if you're running out of breath, then maybe you could lower it down a notch or two. Now, another factor that contributes to high cholesterol level is cigarette smoking. Now, still with Dr. Luella, could you take us through how cigarette smoking has any relation with someone's cholesterol?
Great. So this was actually part of our 2020 guidelines for the management of dyslipidemia, where we recommend smoking cessation in all patients. And there was even a statement that we issued on vaping. So when we talk about smoking, we know that the nicotine that is inside these cigarettes actually has the ability to make your blood vessels act like double-sided tape, where it's easy for LDL cholesterol to stick along the arteries and build up these cholesterol plaques when smoking is on board. Same with vaping, which is a lighter form of smoking, but our recommendation so far is also to use it as a bridge to discontinue smoking, but not to continue to vape because it also exposes your body to the same amount of nicotine.
Dr. Katz, earlier we talked about yung mga factors that contribute to increased cholesterol that can be controlled. But there are also other factors na walang control ang isang tao. Could you elaborate on these factors?
Yes, there are non-modifiable risk factors like the age of the patient. Usually, when people age, the metabolism is also somewhat slow also with the cholesterol. In women, for menopausal women, usually we don't have any protective hormone anymore. And it can cause the accumulation of cholesterol. So some people has familial dyslipidemia. So usually, the family has a gene mutation that could also cause decrease in metabolism of cholesterol, thus increasing the cholesterol levels. So usually, as family physicians, we always do counseling and asking for the family history of the patients. Sometimes it would reveal that there's familial dyslipidemia in the family.
Now, did you know that lifestyle changes to lower your cholesterol can actually be easy? We'll go through these after a short break. Keep it here on CNN Philippines. Now is the time to take care of your heart health. Don't be intimidated by the idea that you have to lower your cholesterol because there are a few simple and practical steps you can take to do so. Welcome back to the program. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez. The first step to lowering your cholesterol is knowing what you're eating. Now, Dr. Luella, what food should we incorporate into our diets in order to keep healthy, in order to keep that bad cholesterol down and the good cholesterol up?
So I think what's important when we talk about diet really is lowering the amount of saturated fat that we're eating in our diet, increasing the amount of fiber that we eat. So that means looking for healthier alternatives when we talk about our grains, such as shifting to brown or red rice, that's more fiber. When we talk about breads, shifting very easily to multi-grain or nuts instead of the carbohydrates, the white bread, white rice, white potatoes that we're eating, so that by increasing the amount of fiber in the diet, we actually can lower LDL by about 4 to 6%. We can lower triglycerides significantly when instead of taking simple sugars, we actually shift to higher fiber foods. So this is a simple way to be able to decrease cholesterol by watching this particular diet.
Okay, and Dr. Luella, could you remind our viewers again kung ano naman ang mga food na dapat i-avoid para maganda ang cholesterol ng isang tao?
So ulit, LDL, bad cholesterol, lechon de leche, lalo na po ngayong Pasko. We know that although we cannot meet others, Filipinos do love eating, so be mindful of the foods that are high in bad cholesterol. And these are mostly animal fat, pork, beef, and of course the fried foods.
Now, Dr. Katz, do you have practical tips to share when cooking or prepping your food?
We could use vegetable-based oil like canola oil, sunflower oil, or olive oils, and we could also grill our foods. We could also substitute low-fat milk or dairy products for our cooking or when we drink something because this also contains high in cholesterol levels. So we also have to make it a point that we use lean meats and usually if we're using chicken, we use the white meat for the chicken. So we should grill and use vegetable oils for that.
Okay, and Dr. Katz, meron pa ba kayo ibang mapapayo sa ating mga viewers in order for their lifestyle change na pwede nilang incorporate into itong new normal na nararanasan natin lahat?
Yes, even if we're at home, we are advised to have our exercise, be mindful of what we eat always. Our physical activity is very limited, but we could do simple exercises in our homes. And we also have to take our medications if ever we have maintenance medications.
And with that, I'd like to thank you, cardiologist Dr. Lourdes Ella Gonzalez Santos and family medicine specialist Dr. Katrina Flora Carigma. We appreciate your time very much. These small lifestyle changes are known to increase your HDL and lower your risk of heart disease. And they also contribute to a happier and healthier life. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and thank you for watching MedTalk Health Talk, only here on CNN Philippines.